Good morning. My name is Jason Coyle, Operations Section Chief for Southwest Area Team 1. This is your May 19th operational update for the west zone of the Calf Creek Hermit's Peak fire. Last night on our infrared flight, we showed the fire acreage at 303,342 acres. It's 34% contained, and there's 2,169 people assigned to the incident. So before I go to the map, we recognize that the next 3 days are going to be critical for the duration of this event and for our ability to reduce the overall acreage to the extent possible for the entire incident. Frankly, there's 24 square miles of area that we are concentrating all of our effort on during the next, for today's operational period, at least initially, and I'll explain what I mean by at least initially in a moment. Some of the, there's one of the important things that I try to do is take complex ideas, multiple different sources of information, different analysis, and kind of distill it down to something that is simple enough to repeat over and over again, and to make sure that it can filter all the way down to the crews in the field. And that's because when it comes time to react quickly, dealing with a long document with a bunch of words in it or a complex explanation of a problem, it's not satisfactory. It leads to confusion, it leads to different interpretations, and frankly, it leads to bad outcomes. So there's a couple things that we're going to be concentrating on today. And the first one is if-then. And it is, if this occurs, then we're going to respond this way. So we have been red teaming our plan. So we've been looking at alternative futures, the consequence of those futures, how we can mitigate the consequence of those futures, and what different actions we can take ahead of time to better prepare for those over the last 48 hours as we see this wind event that we're about ready to experience on the horizon. And so all of that really, at the end of the day, is these if-then statements out in the field. So if the fire crosses over and gets established below us, then we're going to move the dozers to the safety zone. If we're able to use helicopters to suppress that fire that got established below us, then we're going to move the dozers down the road and begin putting line around that fire. And over again on every part of the fire. So when I explained to you the 4 different futures that we looked at over the next 48 hours, then that's why we do that, is so we can distill this down to these simple statements. None of this is foreshadowing. I'm not, I can't tell you what's going to happen in the next 48 hours. I can tell you that we work really hard to look at the different alternative futures that can exist and then how we will respond to those. And because that allows us to respond more quickly in the moment, and then we don't have to sit there and spend the time to come up with a plan. We just react to the situation and execute on that plan. And then the other part of that if-then is disengage, re-engage. So, when we talk about disengagement, sometimes it gets confused with, giving up, leaving. It's part of the strategy. It's another tactical action we take in support of the strategy. So we'll disengage from one part of the fire if there's a higher priority someplace else. We'll disengage around structures when the flaming front hits the fire. So when the main head fire hits an area, and we'll have pre-established areas that we go to rally so we can immediately re-engage as soon as those fire conditions go down. You save a lot of homes that way, and you prevent small fires that cross a control line from becoming big fires that way. So that kind of planning is also taking place in the field today, and we'll closely coordinate and we'll adjust those plans as the actual environment changes. So with that, let's go to the map, and I'll tell you what we're most concerned about today and what we have planned. So a lot of good work was done yesterday, all the way around this, what we're calling Division Kilo, going down to where Martinez Pond is here at the head of the Duran Creek. There's still some open line in here. There's some areas that they weren't able to get all the way around. We flew heavy helicopters with buckets on this all day yesterday. As a matter of fact, we flew aircraft all day yesterday in this little 24-mile square area here. Going down the south, the dozer line all the way down to the 518 road is looking really good. It's holding. There's no fire to the west of that dozer line, and the fire where there's still fire activities continue back close to that line where the dozer line wasn't right up against the fire's edge. Along the on the southern side of the 518 there, to the east of Angostura Creek, this area is filled in right now. So where you see the 518 road to this dozer line and this little triangle right here, it is filled in. So that means, the fires come all the way down to the road. That part is looking good, and they're working to secure that. And we're glad to see that, because when I talked about yesterday, I talked about this west-facing aspect about fire getting up on it and throwing a spot over here. Well, we got a spot right here. It's a big deal this morning. But some of our planning last night was we got our air attacks, so the plane that looks at everything, up early, briefed early. We briefed the lead plane pilots, the ones that fly in front of the big air tankers, who briefed them early, and we kept communicating on this all night long. So if there's not helicopters dropping water on this right now, I'd be surprised, because that was all part of the preparation, is being able to get those heavy helicopters up first, concentrate on spots when they're small, and then continue to work to reinforce the retardant lines. So, but we do have a spot there. And when I go through this 1, 2, 3, 4 thing, I'll tell you why that doesn't mean we're in the number 2 box yet. And then off to the west here, this dozer line is complete all the way down to the tip of the fire, and crews are continuing to try to work in on this edge. And as these winds pick up later on, we're probably not going to be able to put anybody in this area, just because it's there's a lot of potential of a spot landing down below them, and they're running back up towards them, and it's a very difficult area to get out with all the heavy timber deadened down that's all over that area. So we'll continue to work in there as long as we're able with crews, and then we'll get them pre-positioned out here where they're ready to respond to other areas, protect structures, and pick up any spots when they're small if they haven't established themselves, if that occurs. So structure protections continuing all the way up the northwest there on the 518. A lot of good work yesterday working to identify a line location that we think will be successful, going up here to Ripley Point and then down towards Jicarita Peak. And so in the coming days, we'll start implementing on that and get this tied back in. That will provide a line to protect Penasco and Lena Lago and everything else to the west there. 518 road there's no actions been taken on that yet. We've established a management action point, we call it. So basically a line that if the fire crosses over that line, we recommend closure of the 518, and then we'll begin implementing actions over there. Across the top here on our northern contingency line, the work began yesterday. They got all the way up to this little double parentheses here that signifies the division break, and they're continuing to work to the west. At the same time, we have 6 dozers working in from the east to open up that road and improve it so we can get heavy equipment back and forth in there more quickly. That work's ongoing. It's going to take several days to complete that. All right, so yesterday, going around here to the northern end of above Martinez Pond, there are also the dozers that we're working in here are looking for an alternate route to get in here through some private property, pick up this fire's edge, and tie back into the Luna fire scar. And then there's also work being done on the east side that I'm sure they're going to talk about tying the rest of the dozer line that we put in previously back into the Luna fire scar to create a couple blockers there. And the reason why is that today, the winds are supposed to be out of the southwest, west, southwest. And as you can see, more west, frankly, for us is good. So if anything comes out of here, it'll push it back into the area that's already been burned and secured. More southerly is bad. It'll increase the potential that it moves up here, and it could most certainly wrap around the top of Division Kilo here and move out to the east. Main reason why these evacuations are still in effect in this area is we're not out of the woods when it comes to that. But here's our if-then for the day. So if we're able to keep fire south of the 518 and east of the dozer line, going to the tip of the fire here, then we'll work on perimeter control and be ready to catch any spots that may get across the road while they're small. That's what we want to accomplish. That would be the highest degree of success that we could enjoy today, would be accomplishing that. The second would be if the fire spots across the 518 road south of La Junta Canyon and west of the main fire here. Then what we're going to do is work to reduce the northerly spread of the fire and prepare to keep up with the fire's edge along the road that goes up Laguna Canyon. What I mean by that is if we can hold this edge as the fire backs down to it against those winds that I talked about, then we can come across, I forgot the name of this canyon, but this small canyon that goes above the Duran Canyon, and then keep it in this area. You know what, if at the end of 3 days that's where we're at, I'm happy with that. I'm really happy with that. The third thing that can occur is that if fire gets into this area right here, then we'll reinforce this this ridgetop system here with retardant, and we'll look to be able to, when it's safe to do so, get some dozers to work in here off this fire's edge, continue to put line in up here to the north. And the fourth condition would be if fire establishes north of the 518 road and northwest of La Junta Canyon, then we'd look for delaying actions, anything we do to slow the fire spread, but then we would be concerned about, or we'd be most focused on executing on this line going all the way around from 518 up to the dozer line, down south through the Luna fire scar, tied back into the main fire, and then back towards the 518 again. So those are the 4 different conditions that we're planning for today. Those are the steps that we'll take if any of those conditions are met, and we will be reevaluating that through the day and make any changes that we need to be able to accomplish the overall objective, which is to prevent the fire from damaging any of the values that are closest proximity to them, including the Sipapu Ski Resort and the cultural values that exist within this area. With that, that's the end of my operational update. Thank you.